Hello and welcome to the Listening Post's unboxing channel on YouTube. Today I'm unboxing McIntosh's brand new MA9500, their 300 watt integrated amplifier. This thing is immense, not just in its power, control and overall sound quality, but physically as well. This thing is huge, it's heavy, it comes in a box that's held together with steel banding. The freight cartons and everything like that McIntosh introduced, of course, are designed to protect this in transit and deliver to you their hard work in pristine condition. So we're going to take a few moments to have a bit of fun with this particular product and share it with you today. So firstly, their export cartons are huge, as you can see. Their model and serial number information is on stickers on all four corners of the box. And you can see I'm already struggling. This thing is immensely heavy. With the steel banding, the easiest thing to do when you are removing them is to identify where the joints are on the banding and find out which one is sort of overlapped and sealed. Because if you cut on the not overlapped side, it gives you the opportunity to carefully take that band away, sliding it under the box. Now I'm also going to recommend, and this is a little trick for people at home, is when you remove these bands to eliminate the natural spring that they will always have and to keep that sort of, keep this banding under control as you fling it around your house. Bend it. Just fold it. It will hold those folds really nicely, and it means that it's not going to fling around and hit your castle speakers. Right, next band, pretty straightforward, same process. Cut on the not bonded side, pull that out, folding it, taking your time. Obviously it already has some creases in the steel banding from the packaging and box itself, so it's a relatively straightforward process to sort of follow those and fold appropriately. Avoiding all the sharp edges, of course, right? And the last one. The steel banding is probably utilised for many reasons, but of course the biggest one is the plastic strapping that is associated with many smaller products. And look, if you've seen my Yamaha unboxings and things where their larger amplifiers are wrapped in plastic banding, add the weight and mass of these McIntoshes and that plastic banding is going to fail immediately, leading to people dropping the product unexpectedly. So the steel banding is utilised for that greater support. Now at this point, because the box is essentially square, we always recommend that if you can, borrow your mate and lift the box from the sides evenly and slowly. It avoids the box sort of torquing as it goes up and slows the whole process down. And we get to see at first glance, some of the elaborate packaging. So firstly, there are two really large, what's that, 6 centimetres of closed cell foam in the front and back of the amplifier to vastly offer some vast protection in transit. There's a massive piece of closed cell foam for the top and for each side. And it reveals the still large but much smaller inner carton associated with the amplifier itself. Now to give myself a little bit of room, I'm just going to slide this over and carefully take the amplifier off that packaging. So there's the final piece, and then the box itself. Now even the cardboard carton is heavy. You should read the specs as far as the shipping weight. The damn thing, weighs something like 70-75 kilos. Then carefully, now at this point the lid itself is much easier to open. It doesn't have the same heavy cardboard weight to the outer layer, and it's very straightforward to lift off and get rid of. In the top of the box we see McIntosh's user manual. Now it's actually really comprehensive. It drills into all manner of things associated with this amplifier, including the ability to change and dial up inputs, turn off unused inputs, allocate names, all sorts of things to make its operation really seamless. There's also some awesome features that allow you to use this amplifier in a theatre mode, where it becomes the stereo power amp to drive your fronts. And using a 3.5mm trigger and a theatre bypass, any of the analog inputs can be allocated for that function. And those little things are stunning from a feature set perspective, making this amplifier part of so many more things if you would ever need it to. There's a big piece of closed cell foam at the top of the amp, and just folding open the cardboard for a moment, we see a large IEC power cord, the system remote control. Now this one is the same across all of the integrated amplifiers from McIntosh. Getting into it is relatively straightforward. It's in a sealed bubble paper bag. There's a couple of AAA batteries and then the remote control itself. Now speaking of that, as always, hang around for some photographs. We always take sort of close-ups so you can see how elegant the remote is and how beautiful it is from a functional perspective. It's got the McIntosh logo, as long as obviously a part number there as well. The remote, once the batteries are in it, actually has a really good look and fit and feel in the palm of your hand. The normal operations of inputs and volume easily sort of are placed for your thumb, and the rest is very straightforward as far as its operation. Now what I'm looking for though is this. McIntosh supply a tool, a little McIntosh key. Now there's a hole drilled in it, so when you're finished with it you can use it as a keychain. But one of the reasons it exists is for our next step of taking the amplifier off its shipping plate, and there's a second one for adjusting the binding posts at the back. So I'll show you that in a moment. Now, because of the mass of this amplifier, it's difficult to move around. And so getting it off is important. You take your time. The first thing is to sort of roll it onto its edge and then use both the handle of the front of the amplifier and the corner of the freight wood to sort of quietly rock and walk the amplifier off the final part of its packaging. Then it's relatively straightforward to discard it. Now, walking it back into frame for a moment, we'll pause and you'll see the bolts that I referred to. To ensure that this amplifier doesn't move around inside the packaging or create issues, the carton, the inner carton, supports this piece of chipboard which is then bolted into the bottom of the amplifier itself. Removing it's relatively straightforward though, and you can use a tool like I've done on many of my other videos, or today we're going to use the one that McIntosh supplied. So there's their McIntosh key, and the smaller of the two cutouts allow you to remove the freight bolts. Now again, I'll put that aside, so I'll show you where it goes next. So these are large bolts all the way through, and then we take the timber frame off. It's worth noting that even the frame itself has a bezel along the front, because that's the front of the amplifier and it's going to sit on that, and the back of course, and the pre-tap holes. I mean, it's wonderful. The care and attention that they have with that packaging is superb. At this point the bag is just sellotaped closed, and it's an oversized bag, so with a little bit of care it's relatively straightforward to get the amplifier out. So by rocking the amplifier back and forward using the front handle, the bag can be slipped off and got rid of. Spinning the amplifier carefully around, we get to see for the first time the front of the amplifier and that elegance of design that has been McIntosh for, what is it, 50, 60, 70 years now? Now the last thing is a desiccant bag. Now this is tightly knotted to the front, and the bag itself is, the desiccant is inside a soft bag to ensure that there's no possibility that it could somehow rub or create some mark or issues with the front of the amplifier. Again, needed to be in the right place, great to see that, but to protect it in those ways highlights yet again McIntosh's attention to detail. Right. So the amplifier is preposterously heavy, and with that it's difficult to move it around, but we get an opportunity to look at some of the features and knobs and dials associated with it. The first thing on this side is an input control. Now hidden with this is the ability to push and hold and get into the setup menu associated with the amplifier. That's where you go in and change input parameters. You might want CD to be a digital in or something along those lines, and shut off unused inputs. Above it, of course, is one of McIntosh's signature VU meters. It highlights the 300 watts, but also a key feature with all of McIntosh's integrated and power amplifiers. It clips at double the rated wattage. So you see a second rating just outside here of 600 watts. Despite this being rated at almost immeasurably low total harmonic distortion at 300 watts, it's capable of delivering so much more at any one peak. We see beneath the input a headphone socket. Now this features McIntosh's HXD or room field option, and we've got the ability to turn on and off different outputs associated with how you might use this to connect to other amplifiers if required. We see 2, 4, 6, 8 equalization for bass, treble and others, and the display front and center. In that display there are 2 lines of hex code, you know what I mean, and with that can be very clearly seen from across the room without having to really have too many issues. You can dim that display, and again that's part of the setup. There is a button here to turn on and off the front equalization, and a mute button. Beside that is the standby button, and pushing and holding that for 5 seconds will reset the unit should it get some sort of interruption. Finally, we see the rotary encoder volume control and the second of the output VU meters. Front and centre we have McIntosh in the MA9500, along with the power guard lights associated with both basic system check, which will flick on when you power it up, and should there be any clipping they'll flash as well. Rocking it forward, we see the signature power and output transformers associated with the amplifier. We also see, and again hang around for all those close-up photos, we see its rating, total harmonic distortion and wattage in a list, along with its input sensitivities, and all sorts of other things associated with it. Again, signature McIntosh power transformers and autoformer output transformers, and then we see the basic circuit topography on the central top plate. Looking at the side, like its predecessor, the MA9000, it has the McIntosh logo in the cooling fins, and that's emulated on the other side for the other channel. It's at the back that we get to see a few of the very cool features. Actually, before we do that, I'd like to pause. Clearly the MA9500 has been designed to replace the McIntosh MA9000. Now the MA9000 was absolutely iconic. It got Integrated Amplifier of the Year in so many review sites and magazines that it was almost taken for granted as far as its confidence in the industry. So to release a replacement, it had to be significantly better, and that's the work McIntosh have delivered. Firstly, they've doubled. There's 100% more filter capacity within the power supply. It leads to 55% more dynamic power. There is so much effortless control on this product that it will drive any load with confidence. It will drive it at any volume. There isn't a speaker on the planet that this thing can't keep under control. The second thing that they added was McIntosh's new DA2 modular DAC. The DA1 is stunning. The DA2 adds a quad balanced 32-bit design. It adds the HDMI input for the audio return from perhaps a television, but most likely a high-end SACD player. There's 2 coax and 2 optical inputs. Everything's running at 24-bit 192K, so absolutely stunning. And this is just a module inside the amp. That DAC alone's got to be worth thousands and thousands of dollars as a standalone device. It has an asynchronous USB for audio, and then most importantly for McIntosh owners, it also features the MCT link. MCT is for McIntosh's CD transport, enabling a digital signal and clock to be connected back to the transport and offer seamless, bit-perfect reading of CDs and data transfer into the DAC. It's absolutely stunning to see. It also means that they can digitally transfer SACD as well. Okay, so looking at the amplifier and moving on from some of the things I'm very proud of, we see an almost 2 chassis design. Now that, of course, is because inputs and outputs need to be physically separated as best as possible. So they've done it with the design itself of the chassis. We see a boring IEC input and fuse, and we see a couple of outputs, both fixed for paralleling this off to another system, the bridging clips to be removed for the purposes of using this as a power amp or a preamp, and we see the unbalanced RCA inputs as something like 8 of them, all unlabeled because you can label them to do whatever you want in the front setup process. You'll see over this far side though 2 dedicated phono preamp connections and 2 grounds. Even the fit and finish on this ground connection is absolutely stunning because they've spared no expense on something so good. It has a dedicated moving magnet and dedicated moving coil circuit and phono stage on board. Traditional inputs, the balanced, we see a couple of balanced inputs and a single balanced output, which is labelled output 2 and can be switched from the front. We then see McIntosh's outputs, and you'll see, unlike most, there are 4. Now one of course is a common negative, and the others are the 2, 4 and 8 ohm outputs associated with the impedance of your speakers to ensure that the amplifier is delivering all of its rated 300 watts into any load you might have. Spinning it around, so again we see the side and this beautiful and iconic front. There we have it. McIntosh's legendary MA9500 300 watt integrated amplifier, unboxed here at the Listening Post in Christchurch, New Zealand. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more, subscribe to our channel.